Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want to speak directly to the hearts of those who have loved an avoidant because there is a specific kind of confusion, exhaustion, and emotional fog that only someone entangled with an avoidant truly understands. And the truth is this: avoidants do play mind games when they're obsessed with you. Not because they're evil, not because they want to hurt you, but because obsession terrifies them. Deep attachment threatens the fragile emotional distance they've spent a lifetime constructing. So instead of admitting their feelings, they hide them behind psychological games. Games that make you question your worth, your intuition, your sanity. Games that keep you close enough to feed their heart, but far enough that they never feel vulnerable. Tonight, I'll break these mind games down with brutal honesty. And more importantly, I'll show you how to outsmart each one. When an avoidant is obsessed with you, their obsession never shows up as consistency, it shows up as hot and cold behavior. And this is where most people get confused, because you expect obsession to look like steady pursuit, clear affection, and undeniable interest. But avoidants don't express attachment that way. Their fear of intimacy is constantly fighting with their desire for you. So the only way their feelings can surface is through unpredictable waves of closeness and distance. One moment, they're emotionally present, curious, engaged, sending long messages, opening up, complimenting you with a softness you rarely see. And the next moment, they're gone, silent, withdrawn, almost acting as if nothing happened. You start questioning if you imagined the entire connection, but you didn't. That inconsistency isn't your fault, it's their conflict. Avoidants experience closeness as both comfort and threat. When the connection feels safe, they allow themselves to approach you. They might flirt deeper, show interest, share personal stories, or even act possessive in subtle ways. But then, the intensity of their own feelings scares them. They start to feel exposed, and that exposure triggers their instinct to protect themselves. Suddenly, they retreat, not because they don't like you, but because they like you too much. They pull back to regulate their own anxiety. It's not rejection, it's emotional self-preservation. But to you, it feels like they're testing your self-worth. One day they're warm, the next day they're ice. One day they show desire, the next they shut down completely. And if you don't understand their psychology, you get stuck wondering what you did wrong. The truth is, avoidants use hot and cold behavior as a coping mechanism. The hot moments happen when desire wins. The cold moments happen when fear wins. And you get caught in the crossfire. You start chasing the warm moments, hoping they'll come more often. You ignore the cold moments because you think your love can melt the ice. But this is the mistake. Avoidants do not become secure when you try harder. They become secure when times you stop chasing their cold phases. Asterisk. When you reward their withdrawal with more effort, you reinforce their belief that distance keeps them emotionally safe and still loved. They learn that they can disappear without consequence. They learn that you will always be there waiting for their next hot moment, and this traps you in their cycle. Outsmarting this mind game isn't about punishing them, it's about changing your response. When they pull back, you don't collapse into panic. You don't beg for clarity. You don't rush to fix the disconnection. Instead, you hold your position. You maintain your emotional energy. You stay warm, but you stop reaching. That shift in behavior dismantles their pattern because the avoidant suddenly loses the comfort of your guaranteed loyalty. They start to feel the distance they created. Their absence no longer buys them safety, it makes them anxious. And that anxiety is what reveals their obsession. When you stop chasing their cold moments, their cold stops feeling powerful. It stops being a tool for regulating their fear. Instead, it becomes a reminder of what they might lose if they stay withdrawn too long. This is when the avoidant begins to move toward you, not because you manipulated them, but because your lack of reaction forces them to confront the discomfort they've been avoiding. Your stability emotionally disarms them, and slowly, they start learning that closeness with you doesn't drown them, it steadies them. It's important to understand that avoidants don't become consistent overnight. Their fear doesn't disappear in a week, but your reaction to their hot and cold pattern determines whether the cycle continues or ends. If you chase the cold, they stay avoidant. If you stay grounded, they start leaning in. Obsession and avoidance doesn't look like "I love you, I need you." It looks like internal panic when they sense your energy leaving. Their fear of closeness is strong, but their fear of losing you is stronger. And when you stop responding anxiously to their retreat, that fear becomes louder. Hot and cold behavior is not a sign of lack of interest. In avoidance, it's the clearest sign of deep interest they don't know how to manage. They obsess in silence. They desire in fear. They disconnect in self-protection. And you outsmart them by refusing to let their fear dictate your emotional stability. You break the cycle when you stop chasing their cold patterns and let them feel the weight of their own distance. Because the moment you stop reacting to their inconsistency is the moment their obsession can no longer hide behind fear, and that's when their behavior finally begins to shift. Mixed signals are the avoidant's favorite form of control, because nothing keeps you emotionally invested like uncertainty. When an avoidant is obsessed with you, they won't show it through steady affection or clear communication. They show it by feeding you just enough connection to keep you attached, without ever giving you the clarity that would make you feel secure. This confusion is not random. It's not accidental. It's a psychological pattern deeply rooted in their fear of intimacy. Avoidants don't know how to handle genuine closeness, but they also don't know how to tolerate emotional distance from someone they're drawn to. So they live in the in-between, giving you pieces of affection wrapped in fear, alternating between hope and heartbreak, interest and indifference. Mixed signals sound like, "I really care about you, but I don't want anything serious." They look like deep eye contact one day and unread messages the next. They feel like emotional intimacy at night and emotional avoidance in the morning. The contradiction is the point, because that inconsistency keeps them in control. As long as you're confused, they don't have to risk vulnerability. They give enough to prevent you from walking away completely, but never enough for you to feel secure. They want your emotional investment without having to reciprocate with emotional risk, and mixed signals accomplish that perfectly. When they're feeling close to you, when their desire outweighs their fear, they'll pull you in. They'll flirt harder, talk deeper, show more warmth. In those moments, they feel safe enough to let their guard slip. But intimacy has a timer in their mind, and when that timer hits its limit, their fear switches on. Suddenly, they pull back. They go quiet. They create distance. And this sudden shift triggers your anxiety. You start asking questions. You start searching for meaning. You start doubting yourself, and every moment you spend overthinking is a moment they feel emotionally safer. Mixed signals work because they make you question your reality instead of questioning their behavior. Instead of recognizing their inconsistency, you start wondering if you're overreacting, if you're expecting too much, if you did something wrong. That emotional self-doubt keeps the avoidance fear unchallenged. It ensures they never have to face their own patterns. As long as you're the confused one, they don't have to grow. But here's what breaks the cycle. You stop decoding them. You stop giving their inconsistency meaning. You stop reacting emotionally to their shifts. Avoidants use mixed signals to regulate their intimacy. They pull close when they want connection, and they pull back when they feel scared. But the more predictable your reaction, the more secure they feel in their ability to control the emotional distance. What outsmarts them is neutrality. When you stop adjusting yourself to match their inconsistency, their strategy loses all its power. If they lean in and you stay steady instead of over-investing, they don't get to use closeness as a test. If they pull back and you don't chase, they don't get to use distance as a reset. If they give breadcrumbs and you don't treat them like a feast, they realize their mixed signals no longer manipulate the outcome. Your calmness is disruptive to their pattern, and that disruption forces them to confront the very feelings they've been trying to avoid. Avoidants are not used to someone who doesn't emotionally react to their inconsistency. When you don't play the game, their control slips. They start feeling the consequences of their mixed messages instead of being protected by them. And when that happens, their obsession becomes harder for them to hide. Eventually, they realize that your emotional stability exposes their emotional instability. They can't coast on ambiguity anymore. They can't rely on pulling you back with warmth after pushing you away with fear. They start noticing that your presence doesn't depend on their unpredictability. Your presence depends on times, your standards. Asterisk. Mixed signals are designed to keep you emotionally dependent. Outsmarting them means becoming emotionally independent. You stop matching their inconsistency and start responding to your own truth. You stop needing their clarity to create your own clarity. You stop assuming their feelings from their words and start observing their feelings through their actions. And when you do that, you take away the power mixed signals have over you. Because the moment you stop dancing around their contradiction is the moment you stop being controlled by their confusion. Avoidants can only control someone who needs their certainty. When you no longer need it, when you choose your own emotional clarity over their emotional chaos, the psychological spell breaks. Their mixed signals fall apart, and they're left facing the truth they've avoided. Your worth was never attached to their inconsistency. It only needed your awareness to rise above it. Silence is the avoidant's most deceptive mind game. Because to the untrained heart, silence looks like disinterest. But to an avoidant who's secretly obsessed, silence is strategy. It's how they regulate the intensity of their emotions. It's how they calm their fear of closeness. It's how they protect their ego from being exposed. But here's the truth that most people never realize. When an avoidant goes silent, they're never truly gone. They're watching. They're monitoring. They're checking in ways that leave no digital footprint. Silence is not their exit. It's their hiding place. And when they're obsessed with you, silence is where their obsession grows the strongest. Avoidants disappear not because the connection meant nothing, but because it meant too much. Emotional closeness overwhelms them. It activates old fears, old wounds, old memories of needing someone who wasn't there. So when they start to feel attached, their first instinct is to withdraw. They tell themselves they need space, that they're overreacting, that you'll think less of them if they stay too close. Their silence isn't punishment, it's self-soothing. It's the emotional equivalent of stepping into a dark room because the light was too bright. But while they're in that darkness, they're not forgetting you, they're replaying everything. During no contact, an avoidant's mind is far from silent. They think about the conversations you had, the moments you shared, the way you looked at them like you actually saw them. They scroll your profile. They check your last scene. They watch your stories from anonymous accounts. They ask mutual friends about you without making it obvious. They stay close enough to feel connected, but far enough to feel safe. This is their version of attachment. Distant, silent, hidden. But make no mistake, silence is not absence. Silence is obsession concealed. The silence becomes a mind game when they use it to gauge your reaction. Avoidants feel safest when they're not the most invested person in the connection. Their silence is designed to check if you'll chase, if you'll panic, if you'll break first. When you message during their withdrawal, it reassures their ego. It tells them they still matter. It soothes their fear of losing control. So they stay silent longer, because silence becomes a tool that keeps you attached. They don't have to risk vulnerability. They simply wait for your anxiety to reconnect the bond. But when they go silent and you don't reach out, everything changes. Suddenly, their silence doesn't bring comfort. It brings discomfort. The safety they felt begins to crumble. They start wondering why you stopped trying. They start fearing that someone else now has your attention, your affection, your emotional availability. Their silence, which once protected them, now becomes a threat. In those moments, they feel the very anxiety they always tried to avoid, and that anxiety is proof of their obsession. Avoidants monitor your reactions because your reactions tell them how much power they still have. When you stop reacting, when you stop chasing, when you stop trying to decode their silence, their internal fear spikes. They realize they miscalculated. They realize the connection isn't guaranteed. They realize that you, the one person they felt emotionally drawn to, might actually slip away. And that realization becomes the catalyst for their return. Silence is how they avoid their feelings. Your silence is how you expose them. Outsmarting this mind game isn't about pretending not to care, it's about refusing to be controlled by their avoidance. When they withdraw, you don't collapse into doubt. You don't fill the space with anxious effort. You don't interpret their silence as a command to chase. Instead, you take their silence as your cue to redirect your energy back into yourself. You let the silence work against them, not against you. Avoidants have spent their entire lives using absence to stay safe. But when your response to their absence is self-respect instead of insecurity, the psychology flips. Their silence no longer protects them, it exposes them. When they see you living without their attention, something inside them cracks. The illusion of control breaks. The belief that you'll always chase dissolves. And that's when they begin to question their own pattern. Silent avoidants don't return because they stopped fearing intimacy, they return because they started fearing loss. They return because they see you're no longer emotionally anchored to them. They return because their silence didn't push you closer, it pushed you further away. Silence is their shield. Your emotional clarity is what pierces it. When you stop reacting to the silence, you outgrow the mind game. You reclaim your power. You stop being the one who waits and become the one who chooses. And in that moment, The avoidant, who once felt untouchable, finally feels the one thing they never expected, the weight of their own obsession. They reappear when your glow threatens their control, because avoidants don't come back when they miss you, they come back when they times you slipping out of their emotional orbit. They sense it long before you announce it, long before you say, "I'm done," long before you change your profile picture or stop posting about your feelings. Avoidants